Hey guys, this is Vlhadus here on 1v1 Podcast, and I am very excited to be joined by the one and the only Bardtic. How you doing, man? It's great to see you.
I'm d- yeah, I'm doing well. It's good. Got the day off of work and just hanging out, so I can't complain about that.
Oh, heck no. Heck no. And I know I kind of have a little bit of news to tell people, but I actually joined a guild called Axiom, and Bardtic is a member of that guild.
I am, yeah, and member of a previous one of these shows is also a member. In fact, I
Mhm.
think he's an officer. I don't know. We got a bunch of different tiers of officers, but yeah, he's a big guy, big shot, very important man,
Yeah, for
and that's
sure.
that's Fane. If people don't know who we're talking about, so.
No, for sure. And the one thing, like, I didn't really want to join a guild, to be totally honest with you, only because um, I I still was like doing the whole YouTube thing. I'm still trying to get my footing in the door. But honestly, you, Fane, Zillan, everybody's been so awesome, and just I really enjoy, like, I know the creators overall for Ashes of Creation have been, they all have little niches and clicks and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But I really feel like at least what we're trying to do is we're trying to pull like our creators up and really, like, bring us up. And
Mhm.
I love that. I really do.
Yeah. And I've said this before, but a lot of people don't like. So, how podcasts got very popular was people had been doing like talk shows and things like that for a while. But what the term podcast became very popular when a bunch of comedians who were on the road together all the time, like one of them was like, why don't we start doing a show? And then, like, whenever I'm around, like, whenever I'm traveling at some comedy show with someone, I'll just be like, hey, you have an hour to sit down and talk. And it brought everyone together. It brought all the different audiences from the different comedians together, and that's when it really started to gain popularity. And that's kind of how I look at content creation. If you're not networking and you're not collabing, like, that's the meta right now. So that's what I see as important. And obviously, you don't have to do that. Everyone's got their own style and all that, but that's definitely what our group, between, as we were saying, Bane, Vardic, Zip, Bane, Bane, Thane, Bardic, Zillan,
Oh,
10 Man
okay.
when he was doing it and all that. And yeah, and I mean, anyone is always well. And it's awesome to have new people coming in too.
Hmm.
It's what I will. My only advice to you is this is a marathon and not a race. So
Oh,
don't
for
try to go
sure.
too ham on content creation. We've seen a lot of people do that. They come in chomping at the bits, and I definitely did it some. You get burnt out, and you're like, okay, either I don't want to do content creation anymore, or I'm just burnt out and gonna take a break and take some time. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the one thing that I kind of wanted to go into a little bit more in depth. So we're gonna talk ashes, we'll talk gaming and all that other stuff. But really, like, I love to get to know the person behind the creation, right? So Bardic, like, I guess my first question I like to ask people is, like, what started gaming for you? Like, what was your gaming history like?
Gaming was from a young age. I mean,
Hmm.
my first real, like, I mean, we all played like Oregon Trail and stuff like that, I feel like. But my first real game was actually Warcraft Orcs and Humans, the very
Dang.
first game Blizzard ever made. And I mean, obviously, I don't really like most Blizzard things that much nowadays, but I was a Blizzard fanboy through and through. I mean, I used to play Cal Cyber Athletic League for Dota All Stars when it was still the Warcraft 3 mod. Then I got real into World of Warcraft, of course, and that's always been a staple. But I mean, I think WoW was the one that got me into like hardcore gaming. I mean, I in high school we were raiding pretty damn hard, and fighting with my parents every step of the way with how much they'd let me play and be like, well, I need to do this.
Yeah.
So you don't get it. I need to get in and get my world buffs and get all
Oh
my
yeah.
consumables for raid. They're like, but you
Dude.
have homework. I'm like, I don't care. So yeah, that's what really got me in. And yeah, I still love Blizzard to this day, and that's actually something that has drawn me to Intrepid. Is Blizzard feels or Intrepid feels like the Blizzard of old, back in the day
Mhm.
when they take community things like Leroy Jenkins and Red Shirt Guy and all that, and like put it into the game and make it part of the game and really make the community like find little Easter eggs and feel like they have helped build this, I guess, I don't know, culture, I guess. Yeah, really looking at the culture of things. So yeah, that's what got me into it. And I guess I actually don't know, how did you get into gaming? How about that?
Oh,
Can we
okay. You want to turn it
can we
back on me?
flip this on you? Can we flip?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I was 5. So I have an older sister, and we got a Nintendo for her
Mhm.
technically, but you know, I was there, so I was just like playing the original, like, oh my god, it was like a 3-pack. I can't remember. It was like Super Mario, Duck Hunt, and like a racetrack game, and it had like the racetrack pad that you literally have to like run
Okay.
on and do the thing. So I remember playing that one game forever because that was like the one game that we had, because my mom and dad were like, we're not, they didn't understand it, and they're just like, you have that one game and it's 3 games, like you don't need more. And but as a kid, like that's basically where I started. And then like I go to friends' houses, I was playing my friend's Sega, I was playing like
Mhm.
Sonic, and oh my god, Friday the 13th. There was like crazy games he had. But that's basically like where my gaming journey started, and just sort of grew from there. And I was like a Nintendo fanboy basically. I went from Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64, and then at the N64 is where I started going more into the Sony side. So I got like a PlayStation, and then
Okay.
so I didn't get the GameCube. So I basically just kind of foregoed Nintendo after that, and I just went deep into PlayStation. I had a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, but in high school, the meta or the thing to do was Halo. Like if you weren't playing
Yeah.
Halo, like it's just so I bought an Xbox and I just had Halo. That was the only game I had, and then it
Yeah.
was like Halo
I
2 and stuff.
so I love N64. We did have that as a console, but like
Oh,
I've
I
always
loved it.
been a PC master race guy because my dad ran a business out of our basement.
Oh, damn.
So we always had like he ran a medical software billing company, but there was always like 3 or 4 pretty decent computers down there and really
Hmm.
good internet for the time anyway. So I've been
Yeah.
playing PC games forever. And so I'd always like, whenever we wanted to play PC games, we'd go to my house because everything was already set up. We could LAN network with like 3 or 4 computers real quick, as long as it wasn't during work hours. And then we'd go to my friends' houses for the console games. And then obviously, yeah, the Halo craze came around, and I don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
you remember like getting in with like, what was it, 8 different Xboxes or something, or 4 different
Oh, dude.
Xboxes,
Yeah.
16 total players, getting the
LAN
network
parties,
switch all
man.
set up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, it was great. I
The
love
good
that.
old days.
We did that in high school. Like it was in our band hall. We would have multiple TVs, and I remember our band director's like, "Why is there like 4 different huge tube TVs in our band hall and stuff?" And but after school, it was so cool because after school we would all get together. Everyone had a router. We had our Ethernet cables all hooked up, and we would just
Hmm.
literally like some of the seniors or juniors would literally keep like their Xboxes in their cars. So after school, they would just bring them out, and we'd all play in the band hall. It was awesome.
Nice.
Like I loved it. But so going back, so you said you played the original Warcraft on PC. That was like
Hmm.
1992. So you actually had like a pretty decent computer at that time to play that
I
game?
didn't. My dad did.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah. My dad, as I said, my dad was running a business out of our basement, and so he was. I mean, it was a software company, so we always
Oh,
had.
wow.
It
Okay.
was. I mean, it was never like top of the line, right? But it was good enough to get done what we needed to get done. And then eventually, as I got older, I was like, all right, now I need something with better graphics.
No, yeah, for sure. And I know for me, like I played it was god, when was it? Like in 1999, 98. I can't remember. I played a Warcraft 3 Chaos Reigns at my friend's house.
Hmm.
And I remember looking at these cinematics and being like, oh my god, like this is so
Yeah.
cool. Like, and believe me, there was like, Metal Gear Solid. There was a lot of really good games coming
Hmm.
out at that time. But this was literally, I remember seeing this before I ever saw like Final Fantasy X, because those graphics in
Okay.
Final Fantasy X were like way above
Yeah.
what we were normally seeing. But yeah, I mean, I really loved that game, and I ended up during that time, our family was trying to get a family computer, which that computer ended up being mine,
Hmm.
and I was on it pretty much all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
but I
That's
had that one game, and I didn't even know I knew about Blizzard, but I didn't know, I wasn't a fanboy too much. I loved that specific game,
yeah.
and but go ahead.
See, I played like everything they ever made. I played the
Oh,
original
damn.
Diablo. I played Diablo 2. I played so much Diablo 2. That was, I mean, that was probably worse than World of Warcraft, to be honest, in terms of my addiction levels.
Yeah, no, I got
But
you.
yeah, I mean, I played Warcraft 2. We got Warcraft 2 BattleNet edition, and that
Hmm.
was what sold it for me. And the cool thing about Warcraft was like, I didn't even play the RTS that much. I played all the custom games, played the tower
Oh
defenses
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
arenas and the this and that. It was just like a always coming in like there's always something new and fun and different to try, and constantly getting changed and updated maps, so that like I don't know. It was back in a time where there was no metas. You didn't just go online and people were like, okay, this is the game you play. Here's how you play it. It was like, no, everyone was in there just kind of discovering it for the first time. And yeah, I hope Intrepid does something like that with Ashes, where they give some kind of player agency to create like different game modes or something like that, because that would be awesome.
Oh, for sure. I mean, so I mean, you dipped a little bit into your like MMO history. So was World of Warcraft your very first MMO experience?
Um, I had played a little bit of EverQuest at friends' houses and stuff, but yeah, it
Okay.
was my first, like, as I said, hardcore experience where I really got into it and
Hmm.
played it.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a little later than I know some people did. I had, like, as I said, I had friends who were up playing EverQuest and things like that. And I'd try it out, but it never really sold me until WoW came out.
So I had a similar experience. So my EverQuest experience was actually Final Fantasy 11. So Final
Okay.
Fantasy 11 for me, I played for maybe 3 months, and this was the same year I dipped into Warcraft. So Warcraft, this was 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, 2006. It was 2006. So I played Final Fantasy 11 for about 3 months, got up to level 30, de-leveled from 30 to 26. I completely quit the game. Like I was done.
Yeah.
And so then I went into World of Warcraft, and end of story really. 15 years later, like I finally ended up quitting the game. So I mean, yeah, I was definitely a World of Warcraft boy myself. And did you play all the way from classic? Like, because I didn't, I played the tail end of classic. I was really more into Burning
Yeah.
Crusade.
No, I bought it on launch. I was there with my
Oh
friends
damn.
to buy vanilla, like at GameStop or whatever. It was probably Best Buy, or it was probably Circuit City, to be honest, something like that.
Damn,
It
yeah.
doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, like we waited in line and bought it like
Hmm.
first thing in the morning. We didn't stay up till, I think they did open at midnight. We did, our parents brought us there, and there's still a line for the copies or whatever, and like got home like trying to get it installed and all that. And yeah, so I played from the very beginning. Can't say like I got like serious towards the end of it. I was in like, I guess what you would call it, world top 100 guild, even though there weren't really rankings back then. But we got
Yeah.
into Naxxramas, and that broke the guild.
Oh
it,
wow.
it
Yeah.
we spent like 3 weeks just bashing our heads against Nax, didn't make any progress, and we're like, all right, well, we're done for now. I
So
did
that
end up
was,
playing a bunch in BC with a bunch of them, but yeah.
yeah. So when you talk about Nax, you're talking about the original classic Nax, not,
Original Nax,
yeah,
yeah,
not the
yeah.
yeah, Wrath of the Lich King Nax. No, I got you.
That was we were trying to do four horsemen for, as I said, 3 weeks straight, like 4 nights a week. I was just like, nope. All right,
Yeah,
this is
no, for
this
sure.
this is fucking hard.
No, I can't even imagine, especially during that time where
Mhm.
add-ons really weren't prevalent. Even Ventrilo, I mean, there was a lot of people not even using voice comms back then. People were just
Yeah.
literally raid leading with like text, which I can't even
Well,
imagine like how that was back in the day.
yeah, and like you just didn't have the guides and
Oh
understanding.
yeah.
Like when the classic came out, the relaunch, it was the game was so easy because everyone knew everything. But if you had no idea what was going on, how to min max your characters, like yeah, like downranking spells, like people kind of knew about it and figured it out, but it wasn't nearly the same as like now everyone knows.
Oh
So
yeah.
within your guild, you were talking about a lot of things, but like a lot of times other guilds did not share information. So those
Oh
that
yeah.
were progressing and knew what they were doing weren't like, oh, yeah, you just got to do this. Here's your damage rotation. It's like, no, we're just kind of figuring it out ourselves. So
Yeah, no, for
and
sure.
then, oh, and DPS meters were awful, so bad, because like if you were like spread out across this 40-man room, you couldn't tell what anyone was doing for DPS because it only read in a certain area what the combat log was doing. So like
Oh
the
my
four
god, yeah.
horsemen fight, you were spreading out all the horsemen, so you had no idea what was going on. It's just
Jesus.
yeah,
Yes.
it was terrible but great at the same time.
No, I'm for sure, for sure. So, okay, so I'm kind of curious. What was your quitting point for World of Warcraft? Because I mean, you said you were a
Um,
huge fanboy. Like, how long did you play up until you were just like, I'm
I
done?
Well, I kind of quit during Wrath. I go in and out of phases for sure. I kind of quit midway through Wrath of the Lich King. And then I came back, and I think the first one I played when I came back was maybe Draenor. And that was like,
Oh
oh, this
wow.
is the beginning of Draenor was fun. And then when all the
Oh dude,
garrison
yeah.
stuff picked up, I was like, oh God, okay, I quit. So I quit after that. And then um, came back for Ouija. Yeah, I played like intermittent things. I've never been like constantly playing the entire time. But come back at the beginning of an expansion, go to back to find where some old friends are and join a guild and get a cutting edge, and then be like, I don't really want to stay for the rest of the expansion because I'm bored now that we have cutting edge. So
No, yeah, for sure. So I know for me, like, I mean, dude, I was pretty damn, I can say I was addicted. I mean, it was just
Mhm.
when you do something every day, or I mean every other
Yeah,
day for years, it just becomes ingrained. And when you don't do that thing anymore, you're almost like, what do I do with all this free
yeah,
time?
it's
You know? And that was my problem personally. But I mean, did you dip your toes into other MMOs, or were you just, you quit
Yeah, I mean,
WoW and
I played Guild Wars 1 and 2. I mean, never like that much. I played the launch of Guild Wars 2 for a while until the vertical progression on that ran out, and I was like, oh, okay, well now what? Um, Definitely, I've never played Final Fantasy. Played SWOTOR on launch. A lot of times on launch, and then like no game has ever like brought me back like WoW used to anyway. At this point, I haven't played an expansion in a couple of years. Last one I I played BFA like very shortly, like leveled up, tried out the heroic raid, and then was like, okay, I'm good here. Um, but yeah, I also helped open a couple businesses over the last couple of years, or last 5 to 10 years. So goes in and out of having absolutely zero free time, and then after stepping out from the business, it's like, oh, I have all the time in the world.
so
What do I do now? I guess I'm gonna game a shitload, and then when I get bored of gaming, it's like, okay, what next?
no, for sure.
So,
And so I don't know if you want to talk about this, but you want to talk about like what you actually do for a living a little bit?
sure. I mean, I helped my brother open a distillery, and
That's
so
awesome. I love that.
um, yeah, I mean, he's the primary owner and all that, but I help out wherever I can, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's hence the booze. That way, booze
Yeah.
behind me. For those who know me, I do like to drink. I try to not be too much of an asshole when I drink, but you know, stick around. You'll see a shit show happen every once in a while.
Oh yeah, well for sure. I mean, so if people don't know, you also do a podcast, and it's called Two Guys in
Yes.
a Bar. You know, so
Hmm.
do you want to talk a little bit about that and like how that even came about? Like, what started that idea?
Um, so it actually started a while ago with completely other group of people, DKP Guilds and Zephyr Law, who were two content creators who kind of did what you did, either real life or not what you did, but what I talked about earlier about how they went super hard and either got burned out or real life kicked in, and they were like, I can't do this. Um, but it originally started with just like it was back during the Lazy Peon hype when there was like
Which hype?
the
2017
first
hype, or the second one?
the second one, the
Oh, okay.
2000. I think that was 19.
No, 2020.
2019, or
It was
was
2020.
it 2020?
Yeah,
Okay,
July
2020
2020.
hype.
Because that's when I got
July.
into it. Was that?
Okay,
Was it?
yeah,
Yeah,
it was the one, the big video that now has like 2-3 million views, something like
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, covering everything. But anyway, there was like always like at least five Ash Secretion streams going on of people just like starting to get into it, reading the wiki, whatever it was. And there was just a bunch of us that was like, well, why don't we do like a community night? Where it's not a podcast, it's just people hopping into Discord and chatting. Um,
Okay.
and by that, like anyone was welcome to join us, but it was generally like the three of us, and then whoever, like one or two other content creators sometimes, then sometimes random community members. And the idea there was just keep it informal, like just have fun talking, let the conversations flow. And then when that kind of ended, I was always looking for someone else to do stuff with, because yeah, I mean, I just felt like there was a niche for that in terms of podcasts. For like, I mean, those are the podcasts I generally gravitate towards more in real life, is the less structured ones and the ones that you just kind of hang out and talk, and it just seems like the people are getting to know each other, similar to this, to be honest.
Hmm.
And you know, Thane and I had always known each other, but we started to get to know each other better after I joined Axiom and stuff. And Super was actually maybe my first subscriber ever to the channel after I got affiliate.
Oh, dang.
So, and he and I have had met, and both of us had just had many late night conversations, some of them fueled by alcohol. And we were just like, why don't we start a show? And we were just like, okay. And so we just found a night, started doing it. We're floundering around for a name and just fell upon two guys in a bar. We're like, it's kind of weird, but it kind of works, and the
It
brand
does work.
recognition is definitely there. So
Oh, for sure.
that's the, the long story, not short. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I did want to mention something. I don't want to like feel like I'm backtracking, but
oh no,
I
yeah,
did hear something. Did you end up going to the PAX West
yeah, we
When
did.
Intrepid did their like huge?
No, not then.
Oh,
So
it wasn't that.
Thane
Okay.
and I went this year. I think Thane
Oh,
did go
okay.
back in 2018 when they did the big thing.
Hmm.
I don't remember. I don't. You'd have to ask Thane. But Thane and I went this year.
Mm.
And yeah, it was fun. It was definitely, because of COVID, a lot smaller. They didn't have nearly as many people there. Obviously, we were hoping Intrepid was going to be there. It was fun either way. I have family out there, so I was visiting either way. But yeah, we were hoping Intrepid was going to go again, but they didn't, which was probably for the best. It was like with COVID, it was so weird and a much smaller show and all that. But they would have been the biggest booth there if they had.
No, I know for sure. I mean,
There's like,
or go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, there's no other like AAA studios, and I mean, I would consider Intrepid more or less AAA at this point, like with how much they're spending and how big they're getting.
No, that's definitely fair. I know for me, like I would love. So I've always wanted to go to BlizzCon. I mean, I
Hmm.
mean, I was a WoW person. I always wanted to go, but I could not stomach paying the price to not only go to California, but to also go to BlizzCon, and it was going to be like a at least $2,000 adventure just to go.
Yeah,
And I love Blizzard, but man, I didn't love them that much. No offense, but that's a lot of money. But I always think like with
yeah,
PAX, I think PAX is a way better venue or a way better place to actually go and visit these developers. Because I mean,
hmm,
we see some of the, or I saw some of the 2017 PAX East, and then there was PAX West that they went to, and I love the informalness of it. It just seemed like, just the developers getting to meet the gamers and the gamers being excited for the game. And I don't know, I really like that space. But now, all things being post COVID, I really hope we can go back to that, because there's just something
yeah.
about that. You know what I mean? If we can go to the movies, I'm
Well,
sure we can do that.
TwitchCon 2022 is in October in San Diego.
Okay. Okay.
So not far from the Intrepid studio, you know.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just, I think, especially this year, I think this year is going to have a lot of surprises for people. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are trying to be very cautiously optimistic, or just put off certain things that Intrepid's doing into their mind, because they don't want to like hype themselves up and then be disappointed. But
Yeah.
just to kind of go into a little bit for yourself, like what so like how did you find out about Ashes of Creation? I mean, so were you just one of the original backers? Did you just went to Kickstarter one day and then find them, or how
No, I
was it?
wasn't even a Kickstarter backer. I found out through Lazy Peon in 2020. So like
That's yep.
I'm somewhat new to the hype train. I
Hmm.
guess at least in looking in terms of the OGs, right? Um,
Hmm.
but I mean, I've never been to a gaming convention till this PAX, so I'm kind of like you. It wasn't worth the money for me. I mean, I live in Colorado next to a ski mountain. I love outdoor stuff, and that's generally my vacations. I'm like, why do I
Hmm.
need to go to a gaming convention when I game at home all
All
the
the time.
time?
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, once I started trying to be a content creator, it makes a lot more sense. I mean, I've been to all kinds of different liquor conventions and stuff like that. So different wine and beer and booze conventions, because that was my job. So
Of
it made
course.
sense to network and learn as much as I can about it. And that's kind of where I'm at with this gaming stuff now. That I'm hopefully someday going to make it I mean, I guess I do make some money doing it, but it's not, I want to make a living doing it.
No, for sure. So when you found out about the Lazy Peon video, you saw that video.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that video too. Like, so I saw it when Asmongold was watching it live, because that was the day that I saw it, and I was like, holy crap, blew me away. Like, totally changed my the whole course of like what I thought an MMO could be.
Yeah, so I saw it well before Asmongold did. It was randomly recommended to me. I was probably doing some searches for like best MMOs or upcoming MMOs. Like when New World was originally launched, I was super excited about that. That was back when they talked about it being this big open world PvP survival game. Like kind of like a cross between an MMO and a PvP and a survival game, and I was super excited about that. And then after playing the alphas of that, I quickly realized that's not what it was going to be, and I started looking for other stuff, and I think it just got recommended to me. And I started like hanging out on Twitch and things like that. And actually, Golden Feather was one of the first people I ever like saw on Twitch. I was like tuning into their shows weekly, and then Asmongold watched it. Then it blew up, and then watching all the interviews, I was just like, okay, yeah. I'm not the only one that is like this, because it's always been something I wanted. Actually, one of my favorite MMOs ever, despite all of its problems, was Life is Feudal. It was like Life is Feudal MMO. It was you could basically terraform the entire world. You could build whatever you wanted. There was complete sandbox. There was no NPCs, nothing. You just got spawned into the world. You came in, you joined a group. You built up an entire town and city yourself and fought each other and went out and tried to tame horses and different animals. And yeah, it was just, it was a true sandbox MMO. Like, complete sandbox. Like, as I said, you could terraform the entire world. You had to like literally build mines and get down into the ground to find like different like irons and gold and things like that. And so like, yeah, it had so many really cool systems, but I had so many server problems and then botting problems and all this other stuff.
Was that a game that came out like in the early 2010s or?
Sounds about right, to be honest. Maybe a little. No, it would have been later. It would have been like 2015 or 16, I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Let me see here. So Life is Feudal had like some they had like some single player games that were kind of similar to it, and then they tried to make it a big thing. It came out in 2018 actually. But it just had it had so many things that I wanted out of an MMO, but it also just so many problems, and Ashes seems to like be kind of doing some of what it was doing. Someday I hope for like a fully terraformable world, so like instead of like having the nodes in designated places, players actually come together and build an actual node themselves or a city. That would be my absolute dream, but I also still know why Intrepid's doing it the way they're doing it. So.
Well, I mean, I think their inexperience is definitely showing, especially, I mean, again, Steven is one of those people that's never done this before, and I think him being the head, I think he's trying to rely, of course, on the people he's hired many people that have worked in the industry for decades, so I think overall though there is a kind of greenness coming from Steven himself, and what he thinks is possible compared to what is really possible. But I think the kind of growing pains and the learning lessons he's done since 2017 to now, he's a completely different developer, as far as like, the kind of things he wants to promise, what he wants to say publicly. I think he's becoming, not saying he was dumb, but I think he's becoming way smarter in his delivery for promises.
Yeah, I know. The nice thing is like the vision hasn't really changed, right? I haven't seen, there's no real feature creep. Like, it's not like people are like proposing cool ideas. He's like, yeah, let's do that. He's like, well, maybe someday, but let's get what we want out first. And he had a pretty good vision from the start. And also, I mean, at this point, technology is increasing so fast that what he wants to do, I think, is more viable. Like back in 2017 when they started proposing everything he's proposing, I would have been like, I really hope you can do it, but I don't know if that's possible in this day and age with current technology. But when you're looking at graphics cards now and the power of Unreal Engine, it's so impressive. Like the realism and the amount of detail you can get in graphics without like taxing the graphics card that much is just insane.
No, that's so true. I mean, so were you a content creator before Ashes of Creation, or did Ashes of Creation make you a content creator?
I was not. No, I'd always kind of thought about getting into it, especially when I played a lot of Path of Exile. I got real into that for a couple of years,
Hmm.
and I'd always like watch people's guides and just be like, this is so poorly done. You like you could make a much better guide that's much more user friendly than this. And I was like, maybe I should get into making content when I was super into Path of Exile. But then I don't know. Path of Exile is such a grind fest that I don't always want to play Path of Exile. So I'd always thought about getting into it, but didn't get into it until when the Lazy Peon video came around. I was like, you know what? Okay, this is a game I think I can play for the next 10 years, assuming we get what we want. And that's when I started getting into content creation, took the risk of buying way too much expensive stuff. And yeah, you know.
No, so no, I get you. I mean, my whole thing is I did a little bit of content creating back in the day. It was like 2011, 2012, back
Okay.
in Mist Pandaria days, because
Mm-hmm.
you got to understand, like World of Warcraft content, YouTube started in 2005. People
Yeah.
did not start getting really good equipment till like the late 2000s, and
Mm-hmm.
so YouTube videos for Warcraft were very badly done. And now YouTube has gotten way more advanced. People have, way better
Mm-hmm.
equipment. They have better knowledge. But so I started doing what I did back then because I played a hunter, and all of the hunter rotational guides or talent choice guides or just, they were all terrible. They were garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, man, I can do it better because I am a better player. Like, I do more damage than these people. I see their little damage meter. I'm like, oh, I have the set bonuses. And I know it. Like, I've been doing it for
Mm-hmm.
years. So that's what really got me into doing the creating part of it and everything. But I literally started to be one of those people to where I couldn't do it any longer because I just wasn't passionate about the process anymore, about
Mm-hmm.
Blizzard really. And then it just sort of just to continue
Yeah.
downhill
Then it tanked.
from there, you know what I mean? But so for you, what is causing you to be passionate about this game, like about Ashes of Creation
Um,
specifically?
I mean, it's as I said, they're talking about doing systems I've always thought would be cool. A guilty pleasure of mine in the past. I'm a big that from up over there behind me. Obviously, you see the books. I'm a big fantasy reader and all that. But I actually got into reading lit RPGs, which are
Mm,
basically like their book. It's all under the same premise, but somebody gets into a full dive scenario where they're either dying or something and get stuck in a video game world, and it's kind of like
yeah.
Sword Art Online for animes, but in a book format. And they like I got into those because those always had things that like I thought were really cool ideas. Some of this stuff of like evolving worlds and making the world like the fact that not every player like not streamlining the process, so giving lots of different ways to play the game. And someone can just go build a freehold, you can go focus on some crafting system, you can go try to kill other players, you can go try to explore as much as you can and find little cool niche areas you can. Yeah, so all that stuff that Steven's talking about is just stuff that spoke to me, and it spoke to me from those lit RPGs, and that's what got me super passionate. And then also part of it is like I want to do my part to try and help this game succeed as much as possible too. So making sure it doesn't take wrong turns, and the best way to do that is to help the community voice their opinions, and become involved and become a part of it, because that's how you get more influence in terms of being able to voice what you think is important in the game. Because I think this game, it has a lot of potential in terms of the MMO genre in general. It could actually change the way video games are developed once again, and focusing on the product and focusing on uh,
The
letting the
players.
players, yeah,
Yeah.
on the what the players want out of the game. And a successful release for this could mean a lot of video game companies, because that's what happens, right? Like when WoW came out, everyone was like, oh my God, they're so successful. Everyone emulated WoW. And so if
Yes.
Ashes comes out as super successful, you'll see a string of video game companies starting to emulate Intrepid. And I think their values are right. And obviously, my honest hope is that Steven will stick to his values, right? It's easy to say you're going to stick to the values, and then when your company's estimated at, $4 billion, and you're like, well, I could do an IPO and rake in a quick billion, I don't know.
No, that's so true. I mean, but again, I feel a little differently only because Steven
Mm-hmm.
literally was a multimillionaire before Intrepid
Yeah.
Studios. So I don't think money drives him particularly that much. I think money in general, I think an excessive amount of money. We're talking like Jeff Bezos money would it definitely get anybody to be a little bit crazy a little bit. But no, I think the reason why I believe it is because Steven's passion is just so genuine. Like he really wants to make a good game, not only for people but for himself. Like he's been an MMO player for so long. He always talks about, I started an AOL back in the 90s, where it was $6 an hour. He always says that story, and I level with him, and I don't think he wants to botch the very game he spent millions of dollars in. I don't think he wants to do that. But I
mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with you. I mean, I wouldn't be making content and all that if I didn't back this game and trust Steven. But I mean, it's always something to be wary of, right? You just never know. Right. Steven is a salesman at heart. It's just he's a very charming, charismatic guy, and so you never know. And that's what I always tell people. I was like, it's up to you to figure out. You're allowed your opinion, but like, you don't like. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have your opinion. You don't have to go like being super negative and all of that about it. If you have a different opinion from people who are supporting the product and all of that, you can state your opinion, but don't start getting overly negative and making personal attacks and things like that, like some people do. As Steven has said, it has no effect on you. Just sit back and wait. If you have any kind of qualms, or you're a little tentative about it, or have any like serious concerns, just sit back and wait. And when the game comes out, you can play it for $15. You can go try it, and if you like it, keep playing.
Yeah, I mean, so I really love the model, the $15 a month model, no box cost with the cash shop. Now, do you think the cash shop is a good idea? I know a lot of people are like, don't do a cash shop, but I mean, monetarily though, you need to sustain your business.
Yeah.
And I think if they do very well, if they do, let's say 2.5 million players, right? That's about half of what's actually registered on their account. That's a lot of money, like monthly, that they're going to get. But realistically, if they do want to expand to a Blizzard-sized team and really make content that is player-focused, like, you need to have another avenue. I'm not saying they need microtransactions, but I think cosmetics, I'm fine with cosmetics. I don't know where you stand on cosmetics, but I am totally fine with cosmetics.
I mean, I'm fine with the way they're doing it, as long as the in-game cosmetics are as good or better. I mean, I don't care who you are. Like, if you bought a mount off of the cosmetic shop in WoW, that wasn't the mount you rode around. No, you rode around on the one that was your like cutting edge or ahead of the curve mount that was ahead of everyone else. You rode around on whatever mount you had actually achieved in game. And that's going to be the same with cosmetics. There's going to be a few things here and there that'll be like, kind of cool things to use because they're really cool and unique from the cash shop, but like overall people aren't really going to care about cosmetics. And I mean, I don't know, as I said, I played a lot of Path of Exile. That's a completely free game. I don't like, obviously there's a lot of things you probably should buy, and I also don't have a problem with giving some money to a video game company I support, right? Like, as you said, you got to keep the lights on. And a lot of people don't realize how much money it costs to do a video game like this. Like, it's not as easy. People are like, oh, $15 a month. If you have 1 million players, that's 15 million a month. I was like, well, that is, but now you have to pay for a studio. You have to pay for all the equipment. You have to pay for servers, really fast internet. You have to pay all your employees.
To be honest,
Yeah,
I
you have to
wouldn't.
pay credit card transaction fees. Like
Oh
it
yeah.
just starts adding up when you look at all the stuff and you're like, oh, yeah, they're not making that much profit.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where, I would totally see Steven being the kind of person to not even take a paycheck for like the first year, because I mean, again, he has his own money. Like, I
Yeah.
think he wants to really see his company grow into something special and to create that kind of player focusedness that used to be there back, Blizzard, like it was player first. That was one of their mottos that's plaqued
Yeah.
in that statue. And I just think a lot of companies nowadays have lost sight of that, with the fiduciary
Well, yeah.
responsibilities and stuff like that.
Literally makes 0 cents for him to take a paycheck because it's his own money he put into it. So he's just paying taxes to pay himself.
Yeah, basically.
Like I know, as I said, I've helped open a couple businesses. It's not a very smart idea to pay yourself a paycheck
Yeah.
if you're literally, if the company is not making money, you don't pay yourself because
Yeah.
you're just putting the money back in later
No,
after paying taxes on it. So,
exactly.
but that is an interesting question. I mean, they've put in a good amount of money. They've also made a lot of money already,
No, for
which is
sure.
why a lot of people are looking at it and comparing it to Star Citizen and all that kind of stuff. Which, as I said, I get it. I do have like, I'm never gonna fully white knight this. I can see why people might be a little concerned with some of the stuff and all that. And like, as I said, that's fine. You don't have to do it. I'm willing to take that risk. Um, I mean, to me, this is not a guarantee. And I'm not saying it's because I don't trust Steven. There's just so many factors that could go wrong with this game. Um, that, but obviously, I'm taking the risk, and I believe there are more factors, more potential for it to go right than wrong. But I do obviously, I mean, as a businessman, you always got to analyze the risk value.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think for me personally, like there are things that worry me a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
but that worry is not as great as the overall like scope, because they don't scope creep. They haven't increased their feature list. They haven't. There's many things that
Mm-hmm.
they haven't done that Star Citizen, if you want to take a comparison, has done. Because
Mm-hmm.
the amount of money they're like, oh, we're gonna add this thing now, we're gonna do this thing, and da 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 da. Like they have kept their same feature list from 2017 till today. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
really changed. So, and I think seeing the progress, um, is really really good. And I know we had this discussion about, and I do want to talk about this a little bit because I know you're very passionate about this, is the open transparency of development. Now
Mm-hmm.
I know there are some people who really like love their open transparency, but I feel like for yourself things have not been as transparent as you would like them to be.
Yeah, especially more recently and all of that. It definitely feels like we haven't really received much information on what they're working on, or what's going on. I think we're at the cusp of seeing a lot more. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, in their transition to Unreal Engine 5 and all of that, like we just had a bunch of months where there was basically nothing going on, and maybe they weren't progressing that much. They were just like trying to figure stuff out. But yeah, I'd like to see some more developer notes or developer updates. Um, Not just, I mean, they are very open, right? Because we have such an in-depth wiki that we haven't ever had before. Like no game has had
Yeah,
this much of an
it's
in-depth wiki
crazy.
that, and part of that is fan base because I mean sometimes the information is out there but it hasn't been compiled. Good job, Lex. Keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Seriously.
but yeah, so to me, I would like a little bit more information on their thought processes. I guess is kind of my complaint, and I also understand why, like what and why they're doing this, and I'm not. It's not really that big of a complaint. I mean, as long as we move into Alpha 2 and all that, we get some more of that and we get some more things. But yeah, I just kind of like to see a little bit more in depth what they're thinking of or what they actually because obviously it's so hard though, right? Because with this open development process, it is in the spotlight, it is marketing. So if they're coming out and yeah, it's such a hard thing to manage because they're definitely showing the things that make them look good and none of the stuff that has come up as problems or they decide to change or anything like that.
No, for sure. And my whole thing is that I I think they're being as transparent as they can without the roadmap watchers. I don't know if you've seen the latest Star Citizen debacle that's happening recently right now, but Star Citizen made a post basically saying that we don't like to be held accountable. Like we see that these promises, you know, because we get to a certain point and we didn't do it, or we didn't meet a certain requirement, and there's this backlash that's going on between the community and Star Citizen. Now, I don't really know too much about all that, but I think from an Ashes community perspective, I think roadmaps can be a very good thing, but they can also be a very terrible thing.
Yeah.
Because of that whole, well, you said this, and we've actually experienced this. This is literally something you can literally go back on when there was a roadmap of like pre-NDA, pre-Alpha 1 to Alpha 1 to non-NDA to Alpha 1, like, and there were so many dates that just didn't make it because, you know, development. You know, it's some things happen to where they just did not look at, or maybe they oversaw, or maybe something just popped up, you know. And I think because we're trying to literally make sure that this game's going smoothly, we ourselves are not developers. We don't know what happened to cause the delay, but I think they have been pretty transparent in that.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, I don't think they should be doing anything different right now. But what we were promised, like, I just think what we were promised is a little different from what we're getting. But I still think they should keep doing what they're doing, because as you said, all the issues that come with this open development. So it is kind of like trying to find a balance in terms of how all this goes. And I mean, they obviously are more open than most things, and non-NDA alpha and all of that. But
now, can I ask you a tinfoil hat theory to see if
sure.
you maybe okay? So, do you think the reason why they haven't been as transparent now is because they're going to announce Alpha 2 soon? Do you think it's because there's so many things that are close to the chest that they want to make a big announcement? Do you think that might be it, or do you think it's just they're just not saying much?
I think we're further off from Alpha 2 than we think. Steven was pretty clear in the MMORPG.com interview that we'd have a much clearer feeling of when Alpha 2 is coming based on how much they're starting to give us more ideas of how some of these systems are going to be working and things like that. Yeah, I don't think we're that close to Alpha 2. I don't think we're like, I'm not like, oh, we're over a year away, but I would think that by the end of this year we'll be getting into Alpha 2 personally. But it's hard to say. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see where the character creator is at next month. Yeah, next month.
Month.
I was like, next week. It's not next week.
No,
next
it's this
month's
month.
live stream.
Yeah.
And you know, Maggie was pretty, when Steve was like, yeah, we might be able to show you guys that next month. Maggie was like, oh, well, it's gonna, just so everyone's aware, it's gonna be a very early implementation of it. It's not gonna be like this. It's not gonna be the finished product, because and that's the issue with the open development is a lot of people see problems. Set expectations without realizing that they're not. They're unrealistic, I guess. Like, I always knew this was going to be a long-term thing. I kept being optimistic, being like, oh yeah, we'll get into, I was saying Alpha 2, what? I think my guess was actually the 11th. So when a Lost Ark releases was my guess for when we were going to get into Alpha 2. And that was like, what, 6 months ago or a year ago or something, somewhere there when I was guessing. And now I'm like, oh, well, hopefully by summer.
Yeah, I mean, that's my goal actually. Like, so my little goal for Intrepid is the summer. I think the summer would play off really well for them, because again, like I know, and I'm not a developer, and I could be totally wrong, and I'm willing to be totally wrong, but I think they could always add certain things later. They don't have to have everything at the Alpha 2 launch. You know, they can always add certain features later when they're ready to be added. But I think the quicker we can get in, to quicker test and to quicker see where the certain states of development are for certain features, the more feedback we can leave and the more concise feedback we can leave. Now it's all speculation. We can't really make a video saying for this feature and the kind of feedback it is, because we haven't really seen it in practice. You know what I'm saying? So,
and I mean, before they launch Alpha 2, they're going to probably have some Alpha 1 spot tests, is my guess. and I guess I couldn't tell you if we'd had one, but am I allowed to say we haven't had one? I mean, we haven't had it, so we
No, yeah,
haven't
they
had
haven't. Yeah,
it.
there's been no spot testing.
uh,
If you,
but yeah, there's been no spot testing, and also I don't know if that's going to be under NDA when they go back into spot testing, because
no,
like
I
they
don't think
definitely
so.
have to. They can't just be like, oh, we're in Unreal Engine 5 now, and we're launching Alpha 2 without doing any spot tests or stress tests when we have all these Alpha 1 testers who, yeah,
No,
so
yeah,
yeah, I think we'll see some of that stuff start coming in. So.
yeah, no, for sure. So, I guess to kind of go into it a little bit, what feature of Ashes of Creation has you probably the most excited? Like, what feature do you think is going to have the most potential for this game?
It's interesting. To me, it's not any one feature. It's how interconnected they all are. But I think it would have to, honestly, maybe the crafting system. If they can get, and part of that is because of how interconnected it is, making a
Yes.
very realistic economy to me is something that so many games fail at. The travel time, because an economy has so many factors that are just lost in an MMO, including transportation. But transportation is one of the biggest factors in how much something costs, right? If you have to transport it from
Correct.
across the world, it's going to cost a hell of a lot more than if it was made right there. Well, unless you're that, I mean, obviously that depends. If the labor is cheap really across the world, so you've got all these factors from transportation to labor, and like transportation is both resources spent getting it there and then also the time, which is also labor. So all these things that are just lost that make some of these games really flat, and that's why the only way to play the game is like often just raiding. Or a lot of people have been like, oh, the end game in MMOs is cosmetics, because that's the only thing that's like stays consistent throughout MMOs. I'm like, well, you haven't played like a true economic game, and when you have and understand. And so like Life is Feudal had that. You couldn't there's no fast travel, no nothing. You would have to run a caravan from one area to another, and goods were plentiful in certain areas. So like we would have to like take a war band and make a big trip down to the south, um, to pick up, wood that was down there that was not available up in the north, where it was all pine trees and different types of wood, and stuff like that. So yeah, we were up way north in the snowy area, and so we'd often have to go down there. There weren't any horses in the northern areas, so we'd have to like go down and tame horses down there until we got our breeding system up and running. And it just made the game a lot more interesting. It brought back that community factor of having to work together, having group goals that aren't just like show up for raid every week. It's like, no, there's always something we can do. It's more when can we get people together, not, oh well, there's a time gate here. So like, yeah, it's just like a fully immersive world. So once again, long answer long, it's the interconnectivity of the whole thing that really brings a realism aspect and brings back your need to work with people if you want to experience all the content in the game. You can always carve out, as I said, you can always carve, if you're a solo player, you just want to carve out a niche, make a freehold, and make a processing freehold, or make a tavern. You can do that, and then you can use whatever you make there to buy stuff. But if you really want to experience it all, it's going to be, as I said, literally getting a group together to run all the way across the fucking continent, or even across like to the other continent, and gathering up a bunch of resources you don't have available to you and bringing it back. And that's just fun in itself, in
Yeah.
probably running into people, fighting people, going to places you're not generally going to, things like that.
So, you did play New World, right?
Yes.
Okay, like you played it for like what, about a month or so? But did you get to end
Like
game at all?
3 weeks. Yeah, I got
Okay.
to end game. I did my high watermark farming and all that. I was at the point where my only upgrades were void bent, and I spent like 2 days, two of my days off, 16 hours a day, farming orichalcum veins, and didn't get a single void ore. And I was just like, "Are you freaking serious?" And then I'm looking at all this stuff, and people are like, "Oh, well, we think if you get too much luck, it starts turning negative, and this and that, and like there are all the other bugs." And I was just like,
Yeah.
first of all, this isn't fun to do. Like, it's not like this is the worst end game loop ever, is to just farm orichalcum. Like, we were on the most populated server possible. Like there were still queues after no other server had queues, and so you'd be literally just sitting there AFK waiting for the orc alchemy to spawn, because if you didn't, someone else would get it. So you would like time each vein, and so like you'd have like your little route that had like 3 to 6 veins in it, and that's like you just go to each, just sit there and wait for it to spawn. And I was like, this is the most boring end game ever. So
Well, so I only played New World for like 20 minutes, so I have
okay,
no idea what the end game is like. But the complaining that I hear is that the world is it's too big. Like people want mounts, but then people say no, the world's not big enough for mounts. Now, Ashes of Creation is going to be way bigger than New World's world. Do you think the reason why? Let me just preface this. I'm not afraid of how big Ashes is, because I think the problem that New World has is there's nothing to do in this massive world. There's really no interconnectivity. There's no reason as to be here rather than there. It's all the same, right?
Yeah.
Is that how it is? Just correct me if I'm wrong.
You can get basically there's no regional resources. You can get every resource in every zone, more or less. There's no reason to go outside of the. So basically, it's like the 2 centralized starter zones just become the hub, and there's no reason to really leave there other than to farm resources, and then you can just teleport back for free, because they just ruined it. They made it the small, like they shouldn't have had. I don't know. I still think New World would have been a lot better with like if they did the system similar to Ashes, where it was PvP all the time, no fast travel, and you dropped resources when you were killed. And like not all of them, right? Kind of like Ashes is planning to do with a portion of them, because then you'd be fighting over resources. You'd have things to do, but the fact is, people would just turn off their PvP and go farm all their resources, and then just teleport back home for free. And it's just like, okay, well that defeats the entire purpose of the resource system, which is the only content in the game. And then the gathering was really good in the game. I will say that it was pretty satisfying to gather. The fact that everything spawned in the same location was also an issue, but that wouldn't have been as big of an issue if you could fight over it, right?
Right. So I had a discussion with my buddies, right? And he's very nervous that Intrepid is not doing any kind of specific servers, meaning like PvE, PvP, and RP servers. So if you don't want to engage in any combat, you can play the PvE server. If you want to engage in combat, you can do the PvP server. If you want to roleplay, there's roleplay servers. We've kind of agree to disagree on this, but I think if there were to be a PvE server for Ashes of Creation, you would be playing a very watered down version of the game, because it just
wouldn't work. Yeah,
because a lot of the interconnected activities, features, PvP is very centralized in a lot of those features, that if you just completely removed it, it'd be very boring to do those features, and you probably wouldn't want to do it. So where do you sit when it comes to like them really sticking to the PvX experience across the board?
Stick to the PvX. The only thing I could see them doing is designating things RP as an RP server, but I think even don't do that, because there's already an RP community that's formed, and those who want to actually like legitimately RP will figure out what the RP server is. They're a part of that community already, and they'll go over there and RP. When you dedicate something as an RP server, you have like 10-year-olds coming over who have never played real D&D or understand how fun RP can be, and they're just over there making fun of the little RP nerds or whatever it is, and just causing havoc and being annoying and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say definitely not PvE or PvP. A lot of people have said that, like, oh, you're forcing PvP, this game is dead. I've heard that statement before. This game is not, like, you don't understand how often you're going to run into someone and not fight them, because this game has consequences. If you you can't transfer servers, you can't name change. So if you go out and you're just a dick ganking people, like, you're going to get a bad name for yourself, and you won't even be able to repair your gear. You're going to go try to find a blacksmith to repair your gear, and they're going to be like, all right, I'm going to charge you like 100 times what it costs to repair your gear. or I'm not going to repair it because you're an asshole and you go out and you gank people for fun when, you know, this is an area of peace or something like that, right? It's people get to know your name, they get to know your server. There will be people that try to do it, they'll make a bad name for themselves, they'll get on kill on site lists, and you know, you know, the major guilds are all going to share these kill on site lists and reasons and things like that. Like I mean, we already have big guild summits and things like that. So like when we were going into New World, we got together with a bunch of other really big guilds and we made, what was it? I forget the name of the server now, but we created like what someone called the official PvP server, which that wasn't what the intention was. The intention was to get people together to create a fair server to try and keep sides even, because people also don't understand how important server health is, and that's not up to the devs to manage. It's up to the players to manage server health. It's yeah. I always compare server health to being something like a beer league. You don't just stack all the best players who used to be semi-professional or professional players that are now, you know, getting older, and stack them all onto one team so they dominate every other team. That's not fun. No, in a beer league, you split up the teams and try to make it as fair as possible so everyone can just get in and have a good time. And I think people who have never played a true PvX game are going to be in for a surprise. I think there's going to be people who think, oh, I only enjoy PvE, but then when you're in a PvX game, the PvP is it's so tied with the PvE, it suddenly starts becoming fun because you're working together. Instead of like having to work together to take down this boss, you're now grouping up with those who have something in common with you to take down some enemy group of PvPers. And it's not the same as these sweaty tryhards in an arena where it's completely fair battles. You know, you can gather up as many players as you want and fight against them. And yeah, it's a very different thing than what I think a lot of people think of PvP, which is like them getting ganked over and over again by some sweaty player as in a 1v1.
Yeah, that has no consequences either. That guy can just keep yanking you with nothing, no penalty, no remorse or anything like that. The one thing I did want to mention that I feel a lot of casual people that aren't really looking at information too much is that guilds and communities are really going to matter in Ashes of Creation.
Yes.
We've gotten very used to playing games like SWTOR, Elder Scrolls, Guild Wars, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, where you can literally do everything in that game by yourself. You don't need people to do hardly anything. Like, yes, you need people to do dungeons, but outside of that, you can do the whole game by yourself.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten a very anti-social MMO community because of that. And it's been that way for a very long time. And there's a lot of trepidation when it comes to the whole PvE, PvP, because they want that safety net. They want to feel safe in their box. But for me, as a person from World of Warcraft for many years, I'm very much looking forward to guilds mattering. I want guilds to matter. I want people to go into this world with a community. I don't want them to go in by themselves, because in general, you're always going to have a better time playing with others, especially when it comes to an MMO.
Well, yes and no. It's not like I don't really enjoy playing with others if we don't have something in common, right? And so that's why, like,
true.
I mean, Mythic rating was all right in WoW, but like even that, like I put up with people because they were good players, not because I actually enjoyed playing with them. There wasn't ever really like there was nothing that like you needed help with, right? Other than the Mythic raid itself. So you never fostered this idea of friendship of like, I help you, you help me. Sometimes I log in and just don't do anything for myself. I go and do something that helps the guild, because and that's just, as you said, that's been lost. The community sense of that has been lost. And then there's going to be a lot of other guilds that are very toxic guilds that are going to be in for a bad time too, because as we said, the consequences isn't just for an individual, it comes down on a guild too. So if you're not very few guilds are going to be large enough to fight an entire server. So if you make a bad name for yourself, like the diplomacy aspect is going to be so huge. And yeah, like I still have friends from World of Warcraft and things like that that I used to play with and stuff, but none of that. Like I even told you, like every time I went back to an expansion, I reach out to the friends. They'd always be a part of like some different guild. There's none of that guild loyalty, nothing that like brought people together in terms of like, yeah, the guilds just didn't matter, and I never felt a loyalty to a guild. I felt loyalty to a couple of friends that I got along with, and like, you know, we do our dungeon grinds together or whatever it is.
No, for sure. I mean, but with all the different interdependencies of the features, like the caravan system, I'm like, that's my feature that I'm really excited about because, and this is coming from a person, again, World of Warcraft, it's not like the professions were the best things since sliced bread in that game. The professions absolutely are horrid in World of Warcraft. But the way Steven talks about it, himself being a very big profession person and him hiring an economist to actually like make sure the overall economy for the game is going to be good, like that really excites me, man, because I think I love the idea of artisan or being an artisan in one thing. Like if you look at Final Fantasy, right, you can be every profession. Like if you want to go through the work and do it, you can literally become an artisan in every single profession. That's fine, you know, it works in that game. But I like the idea of actually being known on a server for being really good at shipbuilding. You want an awesome ship, you go to this specific person. This person has max, he's artisaned out, he has all the good recipes, he's a fair dude. It allows you to almost feel like a small town. Do you know what I mean? Because you know Bill, he's the plumber, and he's a really good plumber. Everybody goes to Bill for plumbing. And I love that. I really think that is awesome to have. And especially when you go into New World, where again, you can literally be every profession, it kind of just allows you to not really reach out, because if you really want to do that profession, just do it yourself. You know, you don't have to rely on other people. So like, what do you think about all that?
I mean, yeah, that's, as I said, that's one of the things I'm most excited about. Part of it, and that's, yeah, part of it is, as you said, games have become too streamlined, and people get upset when they can't do everything because they feel like they're gated from content. But that actually, I mean, it reduces the replayability of this. Like, I've gone back and played, what is it, Baldur's Gate 2 so many times back in the day. That was like, I mean, I've played through that game so many times because there's so many different ways to play it. You can be a good guy, you can be a bad guy. You know, the story forks. You can, you know, play with different classes and all of that. Like, yeah, even classes have lost their identity, right? And Steven talked a little bit about that, how support classes have been completely lost to most modern MMOs. Support classes have basically, they've just been like, okay, we'll give every class a support ability. And it's like, well, then you don't need the support, right? And then yeah, and then every class feels the same. Like, wow, every class is the fucking same thing. They're like trying to balance every class. It's like every class has an AoE rotation, has a single target rotation, has their buff, has their major cooldown, which is like a big AoE buff generally, and like, yeah, and then you have like healers and tanks, which feel, the healers feel the most different. Even tanks are just like, you do your threat rotation, and then I guess you throw mitigation up at the right times. But I mean, it doesn't really matter when you throw your mitigation up, because you have a big, massive timer counting across your screen with weak auras that's like, cast now in 3, 2, 1, cast mitigation, cast mitigation, cast it. You're like, okay, I clearly couldn't have ever missed that one.
Yeah,
so,
no, for sure.
It's just like,
and so I was just going to ask about that. So how do you feel about no add-ons being in Ashes of Creation?
As long as the UI is good enough, I'm fine with it. You know, yeah, I mean, there needs to be enough customization options to show cooldowns in a better way. Like, I don't want, and like part of it too is like, you're gonna have a very simple bar too. They've said you're only gonna have like, you're not gonna have 5 million skills. Each character is only gonna have like up to 8, maybe something like that, of skills you're gonna want to use.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Steven said he wants to keep it more of that like action combat. Like, he's really going for that middle ground, right? In terms of like, not New World with 3 freaking abilities and that's it, which was very boring in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and that's what was my worry too. I didn't want them, I want to have a rotation. I want there to be some sort of like thing that you do and manipulate to like keep going, and then you have like maybe a cooldown you do, and that cooldown specific to your overall class. Like, that just seems really fun to me. It's always been really fun. I don't care if I have to do that on an action standpoint or a tab targeting standpoint, but I do want that from just a combat standpoint.
Yeah, and so like Steven has said, you're not going to have like 5 million bars all over your screen. I don't think they've decided on a final one, but like, yeah, we had one bar, which was like, I think 8 or 9, maybe 10 abilities in alpha. And he said, I mean, it's not the final UI, but I think he did say you can expect to only see that many bar options to put abilities on your bar. So you're not have 5 million things to do. And, you know, maybe certain things will be a little different in terms of like maybe utility skills or something like that. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think he understands that you need a pretty good customizable UI. Like, I definitely want to like make some of my more notable cooldowns more obvious than just on the skill bar, right? And that's like kind of that weak aura idea of like being able to see that cooldown, maybe drag it out and be somewhere closer to your character. As long as there's that stuff, I'm fine with it. The DPS meter, I'm a little torn on.
I was gonna ask you about that. So what do you think about DPS meters? Because I personally want one, because, and this is what I told Fane, Final Fantasy 14 has probably the most unique community, right? Because they come from a game where they have a very nice, healthy community, but there is, whether they like it or not, there is a damage meter in that game. You can choose to download it or you can choose not to. There are certain raids and teams that form that require people to have it. There's certain raids and guilds that don't require it at all. And I think they coexist just fine. I don't think there's really any animosity from people because one exists and one doesn't exist. So
yeah, so it's interesting. All these people who are hardcore DPS meters, I don't think have ever played a true PvX game. They're looking at this, well, if we want to progress through content, we need to see what's going wrong. It's like, unfortunately, a lot of the time, DPS is not what's going wrong because if you're not clearing content. Because there's no instance like there will be some instance content, but like, right, a lot of these worlds or raids are open world and all of that. And so the stuff that is going to be wiping you isn't necessarily like DPS checks generally. It's because, people are so used to modern DPS meters because all the content is tuned to the point that you have to do as much DPS as possible, right? Like, there's DPS checks, they're so mechanically fine-tuned to the point that you have to use a DPS meter, know who is doing enough damage or not enough damage, because you're dying to these such fine-tuned mechanics. In an open world PvX game, it's mechanics you're dying to or the reasons you're wiping are probably not going to be such fine-tuned stuff. It's going to be like, you're going to watch a bunch of people get hit by a fire breath, or you're going to watch like, because you can always just bring more people, right? And we have to wait and see how he does plan to put in some anti-Zerg mechanics for world bosses so they get harder if you bring more players. But like, to a certain degree in a PvX game, your goal is to clear the content with as few players as possible. There's nothing limiting you from bringing, 100 players, other than the fact that they don't all get loot. And so you're wasting 100 players' time if 20 people could have cleared it, and then the 20 people get the loot instead of like 100 players, like wasting 80 people's time who then probably don't get loot anyway.
Correct, yeah.
So yeah, I just think, I mean, we have to wait and see to what kind of PvE content we're going to see. Obviously, DPS meters can't really tell you too much in PvP. I mean, they can kind of tell you some things, I guess, but how are you
not really so much for PvP, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, not as much. I mean, so it's just, I think it'll be fine without them, just because this is a PvX game. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very different feel.
So for me, I would really like, if they don't want to do DPS meters, I would like a sort of instance then, or a place where I can actually have a training dummy there, and it's maybe a UI developed by Intrepid to let me know when I start pushing buttons, what's the best possible way to do it. And maybe there is like a damage meter, but it's only available in that instance. You cannot access that damage meter outside any other place. So that way, if you are a person that's really about it, then you can go into that instance and just work your rotation, see what works, and then that's it, and then you leave, and then boom, you know, no
See, in my
dungeons.
opinion, you can just let the players solve that problem. Like Path of Exile is what's called Path of Building. It's basically, a thing where you can put in your entire build, put in all your items, and it'll run the Sims for you. And then with that, you can change items, change rotations to kind of figure out what is going to be, or like, and rotations Path of Exile aren't quite the same. Like your rotation is like making sure you have the right buffs and right debuffs on the enemies up at the right times and stuff. But I mean, it's kind of like SimCraft, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that is going to be what's going to come out of it in terms of for players to optimize their DPS. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Intrepid needs to worry about making something like that. The community will make it if it becomes necessary. It's just like, yeah, it's once again, that's like feature creep, right? It's taking time out of their day to make something that isn't really necessary, in my opinion.
I can agree with that. I think eventually, like, I think most things are truly solved by the players anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many things that the players want that the developers either don't have time for, and the players are like, well, we'll do it. We'll get it started for you guys. I mean, that's how the whole add-on community even got started, was because people just took it into their own hands because they're like, we really want this, and we have the technology to do it, so we're gonna do it.
Yeah, like they'll create it like a flash game where you just like try to do your rotation on, like, without having to move or anything, to practice rotation, if that's what it actually becomes necessary. But as I said, I don't see a lot of the PvE content being so tight that you're super worried about DPS. And then even like, yeah, even then you're as worried about someone coming in and ganking you from behind, so you're sending scouts out to make sure you're not getting ganked. And like, there's so much more that goes into a PvX game than just 40 people versus, or 20 people, whatever it is, versus a monster, and all you focus on is your rotation.
Yeah, no, for sure. So to kind of go into a whole other subject, because this is a game that we're literally going to be doing in a couple of days, which I'm so freaking excited about, is Lost Ark. So did you get a chance to play Lost Ark at all?
I have not. No, I'm going into this
my God.
pretty much blind. I watched a couple of videos just to like be like, do I want to play this? Do I not? I was like, all right. It's a lot of people are saying a lot of good things despite some of the pay to win aspects and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game to enjoy in the interim, right? So in the time that we're waiting for Alpha 2, I think this is going to be such a fun game. The raids, dungeons, and this again, no DPS meters in this game, so it's just, I found it, and I only played up to level 13, so it's not like I have this extensive knowledge on this game, because I do not, because I wanted to be like you. I wanted to go in this game completely blind. But I was a fan of Diablo 3. I did play Path of Exile. So I do enjoy those isometric games. But man, so some of the abilities, the way the sounds crunch when you push something, the instantaneousness, it's so good.
So just taking it back to the DPS meters, has anyone in the community called for DPS meters or anything?
I have, but I mean, I don't know. Like I can't.
Oh no, I'm talking about in Lost Ark.
Oh, in Lost Ark. Oh, that's a good question. Honestly,
that could be
don't know.
Like if it's not needed in that game, then there's the perfect example, because I don't know. As I said, I think a lot of people take such strong opinions on things, and you're like, just like wait, like I don't think you understand the full picture here. So like, yeah, if you've only ever played WoW or SWTOR or some other like very theme park MMO where hardcore raiding, and as I said, everything is tuned up to the point that everything is so mechanically difficult that you have to have DPS meters, and then they're coming to like a sandbox game like Ash. It's like, I played a bunch of other sandbox games and never had a DPS meter or needed a DPS meter. You never even like really thought about it, because there are too many other factors that like an individual's immediate like DPS, like you talk about it, like how to try and get the most out of your DPS, but yeah, you were too worried about too many 5 million other things, and there's always something to do that like, yeah, you're not min-maxing your DPS quite the same way. And it seems like Lost Ark is a little bit like that, right? At least from what I was looking at, is a lot of the progress is somewhat horizontal. So like you're doing all these different things to try and like slowly build up over time, and it doesn't seem like, well, I don't know. That's what I was looking at like how you have to do your dailies and your weeklies and all that stuff. And I don't know how hard some of these dungeons are, but it seems like it's more doing the, from what I was watching of the boss fights, it looks like it's doing the mechanics is more important than doing DPS.
No, I got you. Well, I guess to kind of wrap this up, and this is more for myself because I actually have a birthday party we're doing here at the house.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
And so, so where can people find you? Like on social media and stuff like that?
So yeah, anything Bardtic, BARDTIC. Yeah, Twitch, YouTube, Gmail, Twitter. I think I made an Instagram. I haven't posted anything. That's one of the reasons I decided on this name. It wasn't taken anywhere, which is perfect.
Same with mine. Vlhadus was not taken anywhere.
Yeah.
Vlhadus or Vlhadus Gaming. That was one of the main reasons why I did it. But no, honestly, Bardtic, thank you so much for talking.
Yeah,
like, I think
it's a lot of fun.
I really enjoyed this conversation. So by the time people watch this, it'll actually be Wednesday, the 9th. So we've already been playing Lost Ark. And if don't get
for those with the head start.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I gonna be on Two Guys in a Bard Wednesday?
Oh yeah, on Wednesday. So you'll post it on Wednesday. Okay, yeah. Come hang out with us on Wednesday night, 6 p.m. That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. So it's like, what do you watch this?
Right.
Come and watch Two Guys in a Bard that evening. We'll be on. I'll
6
be on
p.m. PST, twitch.tv/Bardtic.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching 1v1. My name is Vlhadus. I'm with Bardtic. I'll see you guys later in the next one.
See you guys.